Hey, what's up tankers? Buckskin Snuggy here with a quick tank review for the T26E4 Super Pershing. I actually have the Freedom version of it. It's essentially the exact same tank, but the first thing I would like to talk about with this tank is the armor. If you take a quick look here on paper, it sounds to be somewhat reliable for the armor. The front has got 178 mils. The turret on the front has 102 mils. On the sides of the turret and the tank itself, it actually only has 76 mils. And the back of the turret also 76 mils, and the ass end of this tank is 51 mils. But if you actually take a quick look at the front of this tank, it's got two 38mm plates that have spaced armor that actually increase the effective value of this armor extremely. Okay, basically what it works out to, because it's a 68-degree angle and it's two 38mm plates of spaced armor, the effective armor value actually works out to be almost 300. I believe it's about 295 effective armor value. So a lot of people smacking you in the front and lower plate of this tank are going to have a really hard time punching through you. And even on the front of the turret, actually, it also has another big plate of spaced armor on here. So people are really going to have a hard time basically punching through. But if you notice quickly here too though, you take a quick look at the spaced armor, the inside plate doesn't actually go all the way up to the front. You see what I mean? Because there are two plates. You could actually see them spaced in between each other. So the upper hull of this tank in the front is actually a little bit softer than what it is at close to the middle end of it. And if you look at the front too, there is actually a big gunner port that's pretty weak spot. You could see it right there on the left hand side. And on the right hand side of the plate, there's actually part of the spaced armor removed for the light of that one part there. A lot of people have been saying that this tank has been nerfed, which it actually hasn't been. Don't buy into that shit. This tank is actually still just as amazing as it used to be, if not better, because this tank actually got a speed buff, which is pretty nice, because the speed of this is pretty sluggish. But yeah, the one thing you really want to be doing with this tank is you really want to be keeping your front end pointed towards the enemy, because that is the strongest aspect of the armor for this tank. You know, if you get a good decent little angle going on, it will increase your armor even more, get it up past 300. But like I said, you don't really want to angle it too much, because the sides of this tank are complete butter. There is no spaced armor on the sides of this tank whatsoever. When you are fighting people head on though, you are going to notice people are going to be penetrating you, because if you ever are fighting a Super Persh, you know, you want to be firing at the top part of the turret. That's usually what I go for. I like to go for these two rocket-shaped things, and usually I can, you know, smack it around pretty good. Another reason why people have been saying this tank seems to be nerfed is basically because this tank has been out for a while now, and people are catching on at how to fight these tanks. So, you know, don't let that discourage you though. It just means you have to play a little bit smarter with it. The tank is still just as amazing as it used to be, if not better. Take another quick look at the stats here. Let's see, the hit points, I'm not really too sure what they are, but I will figure that out when we get into some gameplay with it. The speed says the top speed is 40 kilometers per hour. Rarely do you ever actually see that speed, because you got to think there's a lot of spaced armor on the front of this tank. So, you know, the acceleration with the 500 horsepower, that's not really the greatest. The power to weight ratio is kind of low, so this tank is kind of sluggish. That's another reason why this tank actually did get a speed boost. The chassis rotation at 32 degrees a second. Now that's actually pretty good. That's pretty good. The view range at 390 meters, that is actually really reliable. The best I've seen for other tier 8s is 400 meters. So 390, you know, that's really nice. The turret rotation, I believe that was another buff that this tank actually got. I think the turret turns a little bit faster than it used to. 24 degrees, that's pretty good. You know, you could definitely work with that. We'll take a quick look at the gun specs here. The standard armor piercing shells are pretty low, 170. That's not really the greatest whatsoever. But if you look at the APCR shells, it takes a huge leap up to 258, and that's really nice. You could basically be smacking through the lower plate of almost anything with this tank, even tier 10s. And the funny thing is with this tank though is it does have preferential matchmaking, so honestly you will never see tier 10s with this tank. Even tier 9s, you only see them maybe about half the time. You know, it's nice playing this tank and usually being top tier. The fire rate, 7.32 rounds per minute. That's actually really good. You know, that's about what, maybe 8 seconds a shot. That is really nice. It does kind of compensate for the low alpha damage. 240 for an alpha damage, you know, that's not really anything special, but it's more than enough to work with. I've had some amazing matches with my Freedom. The aim time, not too bad whatsoever, 2.29 seconds. The accuracy at 0.37, it's a little bit shoddy, you know. When you start getting the accuracy around 0.32, 33, that's something that's really great in the game, but 0.37, it's more than enough to be reliable. Okay, yeah, the turret armor basically says it's only 102 here, but it is actually a lot more where that big plate is, but you gotta think the plate actually only covers so much of the tank. But yeah, personally, I think this is one of the best tier 8 premiums because it is actually the cheapest out of the tier 8 premiums, and it does have preferential matchmaking. For supplies here, let's see what I got. I bring out 20 standard shells, and then I bring out 30 armor piercing. I know that's quite a bit for the premiums, but like I was saying before, the standard penetration for these shells is pretty low, so I try to go for the big ones. Let's see, high explosives as usual. I don't really go for high explosives too much. You know, 4 just more or less for kill shots or enemy artillery, light tanks, you know, open hulled scout tanks. Not scout tanks, pardon me, the tank destroyers, you know, if like you're fighting like a Borsig or something like that. High explosive shells can really put some work on those guys. As always, because most of my premium tanks and every other premium tank in the game make a buttload of silver, I prefer to bring the large first aid, large repair kits, auto fire extinguisher. Those passive boosts are always nice. For equipment, I like to go with vents. I like to go with a stabilizer and a gun rammer. Those always really help out. Let's see. Oh, whoops. Check out the crew here for skills. As always, gotta go with Brothers in Arms. Repairs, Mentor is good because it's a premium tank. Sixth Sense, definitely a must. I like going for Camouflage because it is a medium tank. Medium tanks tend to have higher camo values than heavy tanks. So, you know, you really want to take advantage of that camo value. Snapshot and Smooth Ride, I like those just more or less because I like to fire on the move when I can. You know, you really want to bring down that aim time as much as you can. Clutch braking, of course, always helps with your traverse speed. You know, you want to be able to turn fast and whip that front armor towards the enemy. You know, you really want to make sure that you get that front end towards, because if you have the side of your tank pointing towards the enemy at angled at, you know, any more than maybe 15 to 20 degrees, they're going to tear right through the sides of your tank. Side scraping can be really tricky with this tank. I wouldn't really recommend it whatsoever. Off-road driving is another thing I would like to go for with this tank, more or less just because it's kind of a sluggish tank. You know, you want to be able to reach that top speed or at least get close to it as much as possible. The next ones I'm going for is definitely situational awareness and recon. You know, you want to be able to take good advantage of that view range. 390, that's a really good view range. But all in all, that's you know, it's a great tank. It's somewhat of a brawler tank because of the armor, but the farther away you are from an enemy tank is kind of a little bit better because you know the if you look at the top, that's a pretty big weak spot for the tank. You know, if they punch you anywhere in the top of your turret, you're gonna feel it. Same thing with the sides of your turret. You know, you could be catching shots right on the outside of that spaced armor plate, and they're going to tear right through you. You got to think, essentially, this is a Pershing tank, okay? It's a medium tank with just a crap load of spaced armor on the front of it, you know what I mean? And like I said, if you can too, you're going to notice people are going to be trying to shoot that gunner port and completely just go right through your spaced armor. It's a little bit tricky, but a lot of people have been asking me if this tank was nerfed, and no, it was not. It's just the fact that people do know how to fight these tanks these days, and yeah, it's kind of a damper. Like when this tank first came out, it was more or less unstoppable. I remember I had a situation where a buddy of mine, he was in his super Pershing, and we ended up getting completely surrounded on all aspects of what was it, Ensk. We managed to pin ourselves up to the side of a building. We went ass to ass, basically backed up, covered, back to back, and we fought our way out against 6 other tanks, and we actually came out on top. We both loaded APCR and just hammered it out. I've actually had matches in this tank too where I'll shoot nothing but APCR, and because I have a good game, clutch out maybe 4,000 to 6,000 damage, you'll still make about 75, to 80,000 silver in a match. It's actually quite amazing. So don't really be too hesitant to use the APCR shells in this game. They can be a little bit expensive at around 4,000 a shell, but if you are kicking some butt, putting some work in with those shells, you'll make that silver back. It's a really great, reliable tank. I try to go out there firing standard AP shells when I can, and I know that 170 pen is enough to be tearing through the enemy tanks I'm fighting. But when you're going against E75s, and ST1s, you're really, really going to want to be using those APCR shells because 170 is just not enough to cut it. More or less, though, the playstyle with this tank, it's a really good sniper. It's got the armor to be blocking shots almost every time at a distance. But, if you want, you can get really aggressive with this tank due to the fact that you have great frontal armor. And the APCR shells can really tear through people. Like I said before too, it's got a low alpha at 240. It's nothing really too great, but with the reload time, it really balances that out. But yeah, let's get into some battles here and let's see this tank in action. Alright, so due to the good preferential matchmaking, we ended up becoming top tier in a tier 8 match. That's always nice. Nothing wrong with being one of the bigger dogs in the fight.
Move out.
So with the fact that I have good spaced armor in this tank, and it's good frontal armor, I wanted to get into a position where I knew the enemies couldn't really be flanking me from this side. So I figured I'd press right up through the middle. Surprised to see the scout tank come flying through here. Those ELCs can be pretty devastating though. They sure are fast.
Target release. We've hit them hard.
Made short work of him. I was kind of glad there was no artillery because I imagine with the fact that we were all detected there, somebody would have ate an arty shell for that. And because I knew I was in a tier 8 match, I didn't have any premium shells loaded already. Essentially, I was using the standard AP rounds, just more or less, because I figured I could be punching through some people's. Take a quick look at the Tiger 2 here, realize that he wasn't fully upgraded. He had the stock turret, and the stock turret's pretty soft on a Tiger 2. So right away I committed to just basically punching through his turret. And as you could see, the 170 was just enough to pull it off. And you could see the spaced armor in the front of this tank really coming into effect. He basically bounced all his shots right off me. Took a rogue shot from the 43 to the right, but I wanted to make sure that I could kind of use that rock beside me for cover. Notice that he fired, sneak out for another quick punch. I know for a fact that the reload time on the KV2 was about 20 seconds, so I figured I could commit just a little bit more to that T43. But once again, though, I did not want to be taking a shell from that KV2. He could potentially do up to about 700 damage to me in one shot. Once I realized the 43 was dead, though, I figured I could go back to committing to the KV2. Got a quick lucky shot. There's the spaced armor again coming into effect. Another bounce. And there we go with the view range, 390.
Target released.
Good shot through the lower frontal plate.
Penetration.
RNG kind of trolled me on that one. The shot kind of rickied off his side. And the allies finish him off.
Another one
Now I
down.
think the main reason why I wasn't detected here was the fact that I do have camo on this tank. There's the view range coming into effect again. Spotted the M6. Between us focusing fire on him, he didn't stand a chance. Completely taken care of. Now a quick look at the mini-map here. You'll see we got enough people on the bridge area to kind of take care of the northeast section of the map, so I figured I would sneak over. Once I seen that this was an IS-6 here, quickly switched to premium rounds because I knew for a fact 170 wouldn't be able to punch through him. And right there, an alpha damage shot of 400, he bounced right off me. You gotta love the spaced armor on this tank, it's fantastic.
We've hit them hard.
And there he goes again. And the funny thing is about this tank, when people are shooting at your front plate, it actually will turn red. So they think that they could actually penetrate your armor, and they will commit to shooting at you. But because it's spaced armor and at such an extreme angle, they're gonna bounce you every single time. It's awesome.
Hit them hard. Ready to fire. Let's find another target. Enemy armor
Full
is
health
damaged.
T26E4 lasted about 6 seconds there once he was
Enemy
spotted.
destroyed.
I was a little rather disappointed I didn't exactly get any kills in this match whatsoever, but you could really see how the armor is just fantastic on this tank, and the fact that the accuracy is pretty reliable. You know, like I said before, 170 for the penetration. It's pretty low, but you could still get some good hits in there on certain tanks. You just really have to know the limitations and the enemy armor values of what tanks you're fighting to know what you can and cannot do with this penetration.
Ready to fire. Target released.
Not really sure how I got stuck there. I guess I just kind of went down on a goofy angle. Quick snapshot to the E2 Sherman Jumbo.
Let's
Pretty
find
sure it
another
went through
target.
right on the side of his turret, because the front armor on the Jumbo Sherman is actually pretty great, and with the angle that his armor was, it would have pretty much essentially bounced right off the front end of that tank. And that's pretty much it though. That was a quick, good, efficient match. Didn't take any damage whatsoever.
Mission accomplished.
And even without a premium account, we still would have made 78,000 in silver. That is fantastic. Fantastic. 3,500 damage, 1,600 base experience. Very nice. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. You know, I hope it was informative and helping on the play style, different equipment and whatnot. You know, if you guys haven't already, please subscribe, hit that like button to show some support, and good luck on the battlefield, guys.